Hello everyone, how is it going? So in this video I will be doing a quick breakdown and rundown of how I made this scene happen. So I have three lighting scenarios. I will hopefully share this one, which I believe is the most interesting, right? Or this one as well. And speak about how I made the terrain, how I made the foreground, how I made the hero asset, how I made the background, how I made the sky and the clouds. Now, this started as a quick 1 hour study, right? I did this relatively quickly. It took me 1 hour maybe. For the trees, I've used some blend swap. Yeah, I believe blend swap trees, some from the Blender kit add-on. And I made this happen really quickly using Gaia. So how did I even make the terrain? I'll try to keep this video a bit short. I made the terrain using Blender and Gaia. For Blender, first of all, I did Google the most beautiful mountain terrains, right? And it gave me this one. I believe this one is from Canada. Yeah, it's from Canada or Alaska. I really can't remember, honestly. So I did get it from the GIS, and after that I upscaled it using Topaz and got it into Gaia. Now inside of Gaia, this is how it looked like. Unusable, especially after the raising its details and quality. It looked extremely noisy, really bad. I did a heal modifier to remove all of these unwanted details, after which I went for an erosion. Erosion is pretty much the same default settings. After that, I went for the thermal shaper. Also added a wizard, which is practically a more advanced and slightly better looking erosion per se. I'm not exactly sure, but I mean, it works. After that, I went for the texture, and for the texture, I went for a couple of layers. This could be learned through Gaia's official channel, ran by Dax Fundy, where he explains everything extremely well. I learned Gaia from there. He has some really interesting video tutorials. He has some really interesting interviews and articles. So follow that and follow this as well. I also did this. This is based on the Perlin noise, which gives me this when combined, a base rock texture. Now I also did the same for the grass. I did this. Also this based on a texture which adds a bit of finer details, In themselves, they look extremely ugly and noisy, but when you combine them with something of a bigger scale, they look a bit interesting, right? Sat maps, you could play around with all of these amazing presets. I also combined both of these with a mask. If I believe it, the mask is based on the slope and the height information. Combined, they give you something like this, inverted, and combined, they give this terrain based on grass and rock. Now, it's not extremely realistic per se, but it's a good starting point, especially that I will be removing everything and perhaps only overlaying this on top to add more variations. Most likely not, but it's worth having for look fit purposes. Now we also added this snowfall. I did not add any details to it, right? So we will go to the simple node. I got that into Blender and made the shader. For the shader, it's extremely simple as well. It's 3 materials. It looks very complicated. It looks ugly because I made it really quickly, right? So I didn't really give it time to organize it, since I wasn't even planning to do any tutorial. However, I have gotten asked. Also, on a side note, I will also provide a link for the terrain that I use here. The terrain that I made with Gaia, I will provide you 4K, I believe, EXR textures of this exact terrain. So for this, I went for 3 shaders. One is the grass The second one is the rock. The third one is the snow. And I also did this one where I combined all of them without having to go for the mix. You know, they look a bit different, but it's just because I played around with the colors down here. Now, the most interesting part, the shaders are really simple. You could just use the blend files that come from this website, Polyhaven. However, what's most interesting is how to blend them. Now I went for the textures that I have also included in the file that in the link that you'll have down. Did a quick gradient, right? Played around with it. Played around more with it, added some details, and at the end, you would hopefully have something that blends well, you know. This is not really realistic. You could go and check out Martin's video. I think I will have a link of it if I remember, so excuse me if I don't. If I don't, please Google mountain landscape texturing inside of Blender, right? And you'll hopefully find it. Now, this by itself, it looks really bad, quite honestly. It looks good enough from far, but I wanted to have like a, why is it not loading, of K-Fi? Yeah, here we go. So, looks like this. Since I use the measure, not the map, it has a bit of lack of details, but you know, I did not want to have like 5 million polygons per terrain, especially that I was planning to have like around like 5 or 6 of them. So this one, I believe it was like 240,000. Not quite sure exactly, but let's keep it that way. So it looks this way without anything. So I wanted to add some cliffs, some rocks, and some more rocks. I did that using Megascans. With Megascans, I went for these. I used this one, and this one as well. I changed up their textures a bit, made them less saturated and a lot darker to blend with the rock color that I used. This is the setup. This is how it looks before, and this is after, right? Works better now. This being, it blends pretty well for my purposes. Now, let's speak about the foreground. I'm trying to keep this all short. Please, if you really want a full tutorial, I will make sure to do something like this, but I will make it look a lot better. You know, this was the first project that I fully made in Blender after like 3 years of not doing anything inside of Blender much. I mean, I do the modeling, all the modeling that I do is inside of Blender. However, due to work, I have to use 3ds Max, unfortunately. Anyhow, the foreground, I used a couple of assets from Botanic. I could have gone and used the Speed Tree or the Grove add-on. I could have gotten the Grove add-on and done that. However, I believe these assets look great, right? They are on par with something like Max Tree or Evermotion. I like Max Tree a lot, but this one is also good, especially the amount of control that it gives you. But the shader is extremely nice for these trees. You see, it looks really beautiful. The shader, you could add a bunch of snow. Alright, not sure what I'm doing here. Yeah, you could have a lot of, now you could have a fair bit of things. Now you could add some snow, you could add some moss. No, I like to usually add a lot of moss in here, but I decided to keep it this way. So this is really useful. I added both of these. Here, 1, 2, obscure a bit the camera. For the camera, why didn't I use focal length. A lot of people ask me. Now, I did try it, however, it made everything look a bit smaller. It made it look not miniature, but less small and less epic from the way I want it to be. And, you just have to see what works for you. You don't really have to follow physical properties exactly. You could cheer a lot, it's fine, as long as the final result looks okay. So the camera is 35 millimeters. I just wanted to not be extremely focused on the terrain itself. I wanted to also have a bit of the foreground in the frame. Foreground is really simple. It's terrain I also made using Gaia. It's extremely tiled. The repetition is very obvious, but works from the camera angle, and as long as it works from the camera angle, it's good enough for me. Now with that, I will also be hiding most of it with some of this. Excuse me, I believe this is it. Yeah, this is it. I have, first of all, for the sketch of the foreground, I have a lot of trees. Right, so let me get this here. I have a lot of trees. They are from the forestation back. They are really optimized. I really like them. I also have a different type of trees. I also have some grass in the foreground. I kept it only in this part. And I have a lot of other layers of vegetation while using the geoscatter add-on. I really like this add-on. One thing that I was missing from Blender around like 4 years ago was the i2 software forest pack. It was extremely useful. I had to work with it once and I just fall in love with it. It's extremely useful. So this is its equivalent inside of Blender, and it does bring a lot of similar features. It's almost the same thing for me, at least. It does almost the same stuff for my use. Forest pack is very advanced, but I never really have gotten to use it 100%. I have also a couple of rocks scattered here and there, and the reason would be for this, or the river, which is also something I want to talk about. Now for this to work, I have to use cycles. There we go. We have some foam here, it's a bit glowing. Now for this setup is extremely simple as well. I have 3 materials. One that is your normal water shader with some very tiny distortion using the bump, to have a bit of distorted, distorted reflections. It's really shallow. It's not really obvious, but it adds slightly to the whole mood. It's obvious here. I believe you could see it. Using a noise. The noise is a bit stretched out to make up for the wind, as if the wind is coming from the side. It's disrupting the surface of water, creating these small ripples or small, just disturbing the whole thing. Not as much as trying to word that out, disturbing a lot. There we go. We also have this here as well. This is how I made the foam. The foam is really simple. It's extremely tiled. You could get the foam texture from Ambient CG or from textures.com. Now, with that being mentioned, I tiled it way too much for it to be obvious from the camera perspective. Now it makes a bit of sense. Now I mixed that. To mix these two shaders, I did that using the ambient occlusion. I want it to be affected by this. Now it's not obvious in the Eevee, but it would be obvious here. So we have this. I also added some freckles using the noise. Here we go. When multiplied, it looks like this. Now these types of these bubbles, these debris maybe. So it gives a bit more details. Now I also did that for this white shader, and at the end it looks something like this. You have some really shallow ones. These were meant, I also like the way how I have these strips, they look like as if it's like a debris, right? Now, with that, I will also like to speak about the sketching of the mountain. Now, for the mountain, I have used this exactly. So, excuse me, let me see with this submission. I used alpha trees. They're not going to be obvious in this view, but they are obvious here. I have a couple of thousand meshes, I believe. I have a couple of thousands or maybe tens of thousands of small planes with alpha maps of the trees. Now I could have gone and used some real trees, but it would have killed my machine. Even on an RTX 4070, it's really slow without these. So the add-on did everything for me. Otherwise, I could have done it with really simple techniques, a couple of constraints, and it's the same thing, but this is just a lot more practical. Now we have this going on. I would like now to speak about the lighting. Now for the lighting, I have a couple of lights here. I have this one, this one, and this one, in addition to the sun. For the world, what do I have inside of the world? I have a really simple setup. I would like to just have these around. See how this is looking. Or so I would also like to, there we go. Now we could see the lighting. It's a sky texture with these settings. I wanted to have the very high altitude. It's not realistic to have. Also, the sun elevation would be at around 0. The background is really not powerful, I also upped the ozone to have more of a bluish tint, right? Because I knew that it would be mitigated by the sun and the effects of the fog on the sun. Now, what else do I have? I have the sun as well. The sun is normal settings. I could have embedded the sun here. However, I prefer to have a lot more control over it. These are the settings of the sun. I used a black body node, for the temperature. I have gone with 2300 degrees to have an extremely warm, near candle warm. This makes it a bit more interesting, and it just looks appealing in my opinion. It's definitely a bit too much in this case, but it works. I like the way it looks. Now in itself, it does look fine. However, I had to add a couple of lights to highlight certain parts. Now, let me locate where these lights are. We have a couple of spots. We have 4 spots. So let me hide all of them and view how this looks. It will definitely take a bit of time to load everything, but it shouldn't be too much. Here we go. Looks fine. Looks fine. This is without the sun. Doesn't look fine, but with the sun, looks fine. With the first spot, let's see what it is doing. What the spot doing here? It is. This spot here is illuminating this part. Since I do have trees here, I would like to show them, even if they are going to murder my machine, but no problem. We have this, we have the, here we go. All right, just keep this. Now, I wanted to highlight this a bit, right? So it's hidden. There is no highlight. No, I really like the way it looks with the highlight on. Now, not as interesting. You can't even see that there are trees. It's just the silhouette that is obvious, but I want them to catch a bit of light. So I did that here, and I made the light settings have a bit of directionality. Not sure if it's called directionality in Blender, but I made them have a bit of this spread. I believe it's by default at 45, so it's more focused. Now the same drill for the rest of the lights. Same thing. Here we go. This one is more focused on this. This one, I'm not sure what it's doing. Okay, anyway, let me check where it's pointing. Yeah, it's pointing to the foreground, to the front of the camera. Yeah, there we go. This is where it's pointing, right? And we have this one as well. It's pointing also somewhere here. It's not realistic, it doesn't make sense to have multiple directions of light, but it looks good, so you might as well just keep it. Same as well. 2,400 degrees in the temperature. Now with this, I also added a lot of fog, actually. We have this fog, it's just a cube. I got a cube, subdivided it, added some subdivision and displacement. With that, we have an okay fog, This is how it looks from the inside. We have this. We also have another one that is somewhere in these layers. Have some fog here, some fog planes. I did not use them at the end. We also have a fair bit of fog. We have this big fog mesh. Now for the settings, I have tried a couple of settings. Now these ones work the best. It depends highly on the lighting. It depends mostly on the scale, from my experience. A bit of anisotropy to have some form of God rays, while it's not as obvious, but it's there. I have a bit of emission strength. I mean, it's almost non-existent only to add a bit of a hint of blue to a bit contrast with or mitigate the effect of all of the black body temperatures, right? So here we go. I also added one here. Blender, obviously, excuse me for the artifacts, but Blender doesn't do really well with really big scenes. This is 1:1 scale. I could have done it like I usually do, 1:50, but I wanted to try this. Same thing, same drill, same shader, I believe, probably with a bit more. Yeah, it's definitely a bit more. I also added a couple of things here, some noise, some gradient to make it fade away through the top. Yeah, with this as well. So it looks fine, at this point. Now with that, I also added, let me hide this for a bit. I also duplicated the same thing using Alt-D as an instance, and did not add any more details, so it's just the same terrain from Gaia without any further details, as it wouldn't even be visible. Now for the part that I like is how I made the sky. Now the sky, not precisely good, but it works. Now it's a bunch of planes. These planes have some settings on. This is the image I got from Unsplash, right? This is how it looks. I made it have emission as well, and I also added to an alpha channel with a gradient to remove the seam from it, right? It had a really bad seam. Here it is. So it would almost be like cloud cards that you find in games, or just real-time visuals or just normal visuals while optimizing them. And I wanted to duplicate it around, and that's what I did. It looks like this. I could just add one here. I could add another one here. I could just play around with its color. I did the same thing for this one, except the gradient part, since I wanted it to have this bit of detail, this bit of cloud here. Same thing, same drill, same everything. Right. This is how the sky is made. In addition to a couple of VRBs, I have a lot of VRBs. I'm not sure how many in this exact scene. I have a couple of ones. Around 8 or 9. Not entirely sure, but they do add a fair bit. So, I'm not sure if I covered everything. However, I believe I might have given you a bit of an idea on how I make these. Now, it's really simple. Like I said, I would like you to just think of it as 3 chunks. You have this foreground work on it separately. Also, work on this separately, while keeping in mind the other components. Work on this as well. With everything mentioned like this, I would like to give you a couple of advice to make scenes like this. I could have probably done something better using the software that I'm most familiar with, but I really like Blender all around. It's extremely fast. I can't believe that I have been able to make this during 5 or 6 hours. It's spread around the whole weekend. So I would like you to think of it as a painting, right? You have your main hero here. I prefer if you go for the 3-3 rule. You have a third of the first image, of the first bottom part of the image as the ground. You also have in this block here the hero, and here you would have the sky, obviously. Now, you could also add some of these elements to frame the object, the hero object better here, which is the mountain. You could also play with the lighting to do a better composition. Because everything is really interchangeable here. It's all tied with itself. The lighting plays a huge role in composition, in drawing your eyes. I made this a bit obscured, with a bit of spotlighting in this area here. This area, it has a bit of a spotlight, but all around it's really dark in comparison to here. So the contrast between here and there is makes your eyes draw to this part. Now, does it work? Yes, I believe it does work. Your eyes is really focused on this part, especially with this huge cloud. I also added some lighting here, to have a bit of highlights. However, it doesn't really mitigate from the effect a lot. I also wanted to add this bit of light here. I did not do it for the rest of the images, like this one here. But it works. It works. Now, with everything being mentioned, like I said, play around with volumes, play around with shaders, play around with the lighting and the composition, most importantly. You don't really have to have a highly realistic scene, I have one scene that is extremely realistic, I believe, and it's in this folder, in the older portfolio folder, which shows a fair bit of my work. There we go. It is realistic. However, is it appealing? I don't think so. It just looks like an image, It doesn't have a story behind it.